All right, we are back live at this very special SVK edition as we adjust our mics. Here at the Restaurants Canada show, we have Margot joining us from Technomic. Technomic. I did it right.
You got it right.
Nailed it. And here to talk about more consumer trends and looking at the landscapes. And I think, as we were talking before the show, it's more important than ever to have the best data around your consumers because, we may have fewer opportunities. People are maybe going out less than ever. So the expectations are higher. And you've got the data that restaurants need to delight their guests. So maybe if you want to maybe start introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Technomic. And
sure, absolutely. So Technomic is leading food away from home market research company. So we do business, and we've been doing this for 55 plus years in the US, Canada, and now 23 additional countries around the world. Mm-hmm. So why do we do that? Well, companies like Cisco and some of the big vendors, think about Coke of this world, or large operators that we were doing custom research in other countries around the world, wanted some of that same rigorous insight into the food service guests, the menu, the trends, what's happening in size in the industry, because it is a small world.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we experience, especially in places like Canada and North America, is that a lot of what's going on around the world finds their way into our markets. So how do we peel it back and understand what's happening? So we do that now. I work with predominantly a lot of the companies in Canada, and I have a lot of clients in the US as well.
That's great. And it's so important that not only do you guys specialize in takeout or food away from home, but specifically, and which I think it's more important than ever, right? Because more people are consuming food outside of restaurants and in all different forms and all different places than ever. And
exactly that.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, so we study the industry from top to bottom. So we call commercial restaurants, quick service restaurants, full service restaurants. We understand that. But we also track what's happening at ski resorts or in the recreation space, right? Mm-hmm. Think about what happened during the pandemic. Your Dave & Buster's of this world, or Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, recreation locations. What happened to the hotel industry? So the food that's consumed, both the convention banquet space as well as the everyday restaurants in those spaces. So we really have a good understanding of all the segments. And what does that one consumer do as they travel? So how do they use quick service? How do they use a full service restaurant? What do they do when they're maybe at work and they're in their place of business? Mm-hmm. Businesses shut down during the pandemic. And so all of those corporate cafeterias closed shop for a number of years. And in fact, it's one of the areas or segments that continues to lag in the recovery. So quick service restaurants are back on track. Full service restaurants are looking to hit their numbers by this year in terms of traffic, sales, and we've had a tremendous upsurge. But there's certain places where you and I, as consumers, would have a food service experience. Airlines, think travel.
Yeah.
Right? So all of that dried up, but now the industry's back on track. And they're suffering from employees and labor, but we're still trying to get a good food service experience at an airport, we're still trying
or on the airplane,
or on the airplane, exactly.
Well, I think something really interesting is I think everybody knows, we talk about it all the time, the landscape's changed, consumers change, their habits have changed since the pandemic, and you take the idea of a corporate cafeteria that shuts down for 2 years, they can't just open back up and be like, all right, we're here again, guys, we've got your specials, your Thursday special, and everyone's just like, I don't eat that anymore, or just we're not sure, or didn't you hear this is? And then there's obviously the sustainable packaging and all the new requirements coming in. So,
and to be those operators, right? So you have to forecast. You might have an employee base. You could be in a corporate tower in Calgary or Vancouver or Montreal or downtown or the banking sector. Yeah. They have employees and they start to bring them back to work. Is it an optional thing? I'm there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yeah. Now you're the operator, the restaurant operator in that commercial space. You might have a population base of 1,000 employees in the tower.
Yeah.
How many are actually coming? How do you forecast the hours of operation? All of these things are real challenges. And in fact, Joe Paul, one of our managing principals, he spoke yesterday on stage to talk about how challenging it is to get for restaurant operators that were in those downtown cores, right? So maybe they were very popular for breakfast and lunch. Well, some of that business dried up, but they've moved to late night for those that are living in those communities. But how do you switch your operation and so catering. So right now, businesses are trying to get employees back to work. So it could be premium coffees. I just read today, some of these business environments are bringing in baristas.
Yeah.
They're trying to, how do I offer something to get my employees to know that it's a better, aside from the work environment, but it's a great place to come back to.
Can I just stop for just 1 second? Because you said two things that I don't know if people are linking, but you have the data to link this. It's like your work cafeteria can change because one day 1,000 employees are in the office,
Yes.
and then it's 200, and then it's 500, then it's 1,000 again. So how are you supposed to manage that? But what about all of the businesses or restaurants around that office that also used to function with like 5 days a week, 9 to 5 crowd?
Absolutely.
They have the breakfast. It's like they may not know that the office that they used to serve all the time actually does have 100% capacity on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday now, and then they can react to that.
Bingo. And,
Nailed it, yeah.
that's when we think about some of the independent operators, it was the city core that really struggled. So where has the growth and the recovery come from?
Yeah.
Well, the pandemic took off in the suburbs, for sure, right? It's taken off, and those restaurants weren't prepared for that surge. Mm-hmm. And some of the relocation, the real estate issues, but that's a whole separate conversation because restaurants are moving, but those downtown core restaurants have really struggled.
Yeah.
So breakfast and lunch day part, but also populations, and they're one step removed from, say, the building or the employer location that knows what the policy is. They're really on this receiving end of the notice.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that some of the clients we're talking to is they're trying to incentivize employees to come back. They're adding catering programs, and that's a way for an operator to also respond to say, you might have had steady traffic flow coming in off the streets at breakfast and lunch, but now how do you pull your stuff together? So you go in and you market to the businesses in your area to say, hey, we can do snack, we can do a lunch catering, we can do, what do you need us to do, and how do you need us to support you and the employees to be back into this space?
Yeah, and looking at this, by the way, incredible facts and quick stats about the industry provided by Technomic. I've learned so much just before the show. But you talked about this idea of these trends like increasing like now versus say 2019, and one of the ideas that the routine meal has gone up, as in like people plan it on their way to work and not. And so everything we just talked about, making sure like how do you know as a restaurant that is the routine for this employees now is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or that so people are already making it more part of their routine. But it's hard to staff your restaurant and be 100% of the time if the flow fluctuates so much. So just looking at these data points, working with a company like you guys, they can draw this conclusion and say, hey, this is how we need to staff our restaurant.
The new normal, we keep talking about it. Nobody knows what that is yet. So all of our routines were disrupted, except for, let's say, first responders. But then we started to go back to school, and we started to go back to work, and the kids are going to hockey now. So those patterns of routine meals. And when you couldn't go to the store or a restaurant to get a food service meal, if you're a parent or an individual, you have to plan your path, right?
Yeah.
So we call this path to purchase work. We do a lot of work in this space, but you need to know where you're going to stop for snacks or you're going to get your meals. And so now it's more planned. That's positive, and it's also negative. So if you were an operator and you had daily specials, or you really start to fight for that traffic. So all the restaurants open back up almost simultaneously, and everybody wants the same consumer. Consumer's a little hesitant to pop in or to have an unplanned visit. Hey, friends, let's meet up afterwards and go out for a drink here. You don't know if they're open or what they're offering or if they're staffed. So there's a little more hesitancy. I think that may come around a little bit, but we have another year to see how things to flesh that out. But that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
The occasion drivers. So what was the purpose of your visit? So Technomic projected for 2023 that one of the biggest occasions to increase and come back will be celebratory.
Yeah.
So we didn't celebrate weddings and anniversaries and birthdays and promotions and graduation. We didn't celebrate that.
Yep.
So we are looking to see some of these signals, except the challenge, of course, for consumers is that the price of all of this has gone up tremendously. So you're going to get a little push-pull while the market figures this out.
Yep.
But there are still opportunities here to drive that special occasion purpose or a visit.
Well, I think one of the big factors that you guys, the primary reasons driving restaurant occasions was like the need to connect. And I think that's really where you combine this need that people have and you say, hey, well, you can connect over all these old occasions and restaurants need to promote that. They need to promote the idea that, hey, did you think about actually celebrating the promotion here? Because like birthdays, sure. Anniversaries, okay. Everybody remembers, let's go to a nice meal. But knowing that this is what consumers are looking for, restaurants can take advantage of that and start suggesting ideas of like, hey, do you ever consider, like, let's talk about the promotion or the end of the quarter thing, or if it's end of quarter in general and you're in the financial district or whatever, you can make those occasions. Let's celebrate the end of the quarter, right?
Exactly. And think about how you construct your menu. How do you do your marketing? So think about shareables. Right, these are things that we do when it's a little dicey post-COVID.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had any interesting points around the shareables.
We're still seeing it. But creating opportunities to say, hey, we're a place to come and connect with other people. So it could be just friends, it could be relatives, it could be anybody that it is. But what does that environment look like? Is they're inviting? So a lot of operations actually refurbished during the pandemic. So they're clean. So welcome your guests back. We've got something new here for you to come in and see. You'll see a lot of restaurants advertising their people and the service element. So that's a real key piece. People are tired of doing things for themselves or going to the grocery store and across the counter, I'm going to pick up a roast chicken or something like that. So now, how do you welcome them back with an ambiance, with an atmosphere, with staff, and a menu that says, this is going to be a fun place to come. So do you have fun drinks? Do you have fun foods, that people want to experiment? And it's a gentle balance between that comfort of familiar, but with a twist. Because you're tired of the same pizza that you were ordering on delivery or the takeout app or what you know. So you're looking for something new and trendy. And that speaks to connecting.
And it's funny, I was even talking to my wife about it the other day, where it was like, we used to do like a happy hour where it's like after work, we get together, we have a drink at the house, and we just like, well, hey, how was your day and all this? And then we had our like special meals we make for each other. And I was telling her, I was just like, man, like I want to spend this time with you, but like, and it's not you, it's us. It's like the routine. I'm like, we need to find a way to spice it up, or to basically like, let's like supplement like our little happy hour by saying, hey, maybe we'll actually go and get like a fancy bottle of wine, or maybe we'll actually order like a cool appetizer or something. Because it's not us. It's just the fact that we've been in this routine so long that we need to. I think everybody can find a way. Whether you're an office building, you're a family. Like. The pizza, we used to do the Friday pizza night, which used to be fun. That was the takeout we would do, or from a small town. But let's just say that, I could be a little sick of pizza right now, because that's what used to be special is now became the norm because we needed it and we loved it. But now everybody's looking for that. And like I said, I can see it on your stats right here. The need to satisfy. That's why people are going out.
Craving is number one, for sure. But, need to connect is number two. And it's also, you've been connecting with the same person, theoretically, over the course of the pandemic. So it's also need to connect with a broader base of people. We're human, we're socially driven. And so connecting with friends, neighbors, relatives, co-workers. And so that's part of that message too in the business piece, which is to find a reason to come back and connect with co-workers. And employees were saying, well, we're connecting online. We see each other on Zoom or Teams meetings or whatever that is. So you need to find something about the experience that makes it fun to connect in person. And once you get them off the couch or out of their house, and people get that face to face, it really drives an energy. I mean, we even see it with the staff, with these restaurants. We struggle to get employees back into the restaurants to work as an industry. But you can ask anybody that was in the industry. They love the energy. They love working in these environments. They're happy to be back, even in their workplace, to connect. And they're getting a lot of that social interaction.
And I think it's so important to realize, like I use the example of my wife and I's routine, but I mean the relationship between the restaurant and their average guest or consumer. There's like, maybe throughout the pandemic they've ordered more than ever from them, but then they're like, well, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to go somewhere that's different. And we're now competing with the people can be sitting in front of their like nice flat screen TVs that are cheaper than ever. They've got the comfort of their own home and they can order their favorite food right to their couch. So you actually are competing with, I can get good food right at home. So it's not just about the food. It's not just about that. It's about the experience.
Exactly.
And what I've been pushing on the tech show is this idea of like those in-person unique experiences, right? Whether it's like, I mean, all you can eat is an example, or like the teppanyaki stuff, or the idea that you go and do like fondue or something that like restaurants, I think, need to create that in-person experience that's unique they can't get in the home, because right now you can get everything at a restaurant at a home, or you can get the food parts, right?
Yes, and think about it. So ordering on the app could be the routine meal. So instead of just hitting your breakfast drive-through or your afternoon, whatever, as part of the routine, part of the routine meal occasion is now order on an app and have it come into your home.
Yeah.
So even that has a bit of a fatigue factor, and we want to move past that. So that's again about the dining out piece. We just did some work and analyzed, what were some of the differences, those usage attitude drivers behind why we eat, what we eat, when we eat, how we eat. And there was a really interesting piece because when the pandemic first hit, people were thinking community building, I'm going to eat healthy, and we'll call them health enthusiasts. We have eater architects at Technomic, health enthusiasts, people that are going to go and we're going to get fit, and we're going to fight off this infection, and we're going to do all that stuff. Well, it peaked a little bit, but in the last year, that's backed right off. And so the reason when you're eating out, if you're going to go out for special, if you're indulging, it's what we call them affluent socializers or food service hobbyists. They're people that want that experience, and that has remained very strong. And that's core to food service. It's fundamental to that experiential piece, and we're going to see that. The other thing, though, that's interesting is that we have another group of consumers called habitual amateurs. So they're a little more price sensitive, but they also have established a routine meal. Maybe they couldn't go to the grocery store, or they were left alone to eat by themselves. Mm-hmm. So they want to go out on a fairly regular, consistent basis. They're going to be a little less risky, maybe a little less innovative, but they are going to be those trusted guests. And you mentioned this. So the operator needs to know, have you lost some of those people before the pandemic, or as they come back? Do you have a relationship with them? So the whole tech world, I'll talk your world here, has gone explosive with digital apps. How do we track the consumer? How many times do they come back? I have an app now for my skiing, and I realized at one point in time, they know when I'm on the hill, what runs I'm doing, what's happening, and they know more about me than I know about me when I'm visiting their location.
Yeah, but what I think is most important about that is we are collecting more data than ever, but we don't have, but how do you apply this data to your restaurant? Most people don't have somebody that says, I'm going to, weekly or daily, I'm going to take all this data and turn it into actionable insights. That's what you guys do.
We have to distill it down because you're right, it's a big data dump.
Well, the fact that I was able, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've learned so much in 5 minutes of reading this. This is what restaurants need. And so I think a lot of them are being told all this, right? They're being told, you need to know your customers, you need all this data. You should use all these, mobile ordering apps, Go App 8, to collect this data, but they don't know how to apply it. And that's where you guys can come in and say, not only we created some ideas by bringing disparate data points together about going to the office, and not only the restaurants in the office, but beside the office. And, that can take hours of analysis for the average person to take a look at their food trends and then realize, I'm actually seeing a peak on these certain days. And I'm like, they told me that they go to work on these days. You guys shorten it, you cut through that.
We try.
You try, yeah.
I'll tell you another area, though, where that really rings true. And I think you mentioned this maybe when we kicked off the show, is that if you're not sure and you just listen to social media or buzz, you're not really sure what's a trend, what's a fad, and what's just noise.
Yeah.
So we have to distill that down. So I'm going to use plant-based, right? Plant-based exploded. And Technomic tracks menu trends. And we track them quarterly. So we're also tracking pricing trends around that right now. We're seeing what's happening with menu items moving up and down and how that's impacting. But let's just take plant-based. So plant-based was on fire. It continued throughout the pandemic. But we track plant-based across it from plant-based milks in your coffee to your lunch items. What does this look like versus vegetarian versus vegan? And we can see what's happening here. Mm-hmm. So here's my question to you. Do you think plant-based foods on menu are increasing, decreasing, or holding steady?
I would probably say holding steady. Now, we had Beyond Meat on here earlier today, and I would say my opinion about it before this morning was one thing, and then after eating some of their food now, where you said we just launched this 60 days ago, he said it's moving faster than ever right now. So I'm definitely going to take a second look at plant-based. But in my opinion, I feel like they might have just been kind of staying where they are.
Well, they actually decreased. In some categories, they've decreased. Some they've held it together. Mm-hmm. But price points and supply chain sort of overrode that.
But I wasn't expecting it to increase just because you're fighting that, you're trying to introduce a new product to a new market. At the same time, you're trying to keep the lights on when you can't take those risks.
So there were some operational pain points there for sure in the price, right? But the price of non-plant-based foods have also gone up.
True.
So there's that piece there. But at the end of the day, operators have to figure out what they do. But I guess what they want to know is, what do my guests want?
Yeah.
And that's what we help uncover. And we can see what's happening. So on that plant-based, how do you serve it? Is it unique, or are you replacing items that might be covered by a non-plant-based?
Yeah.
Let's use a burger or a chicken nugget. Last year at the National Restaurant Association show in Chicago, the explosion of plant-based seafood was everywhere. We haven't seen it so much here in Canada.
Yeah.
But just an example of, are we actually leading with this? And what we got back from work we do with our operators and research is to say, in Canada, a lot of Canadians want simple plant-based. They want vegetables. They want local.
Yeah.
So where did this, and if you track the trajectory, right, where did some of the plant-based come from, and is it Canadian, and how does that feed into another story for those operators? But that being said, it tastes great. It really does. So will it come back, and what does it see? And I guess Beyond Meat told you they're taking off.
Well, just that they've seen they're just innovating faster and faster and faster. So the difference between, for example, when we talked, I said, yeah, I'm a big texture person, and you guys did not have texture when I tried you guys. You came out years ago, and they're just like, now we do. And he's like, and we're innovating so fast that this is 60 days old on the market now. This one was only a few months ago. And he's like, I'm convincing guys in, do New York pizzerias to use this pepperoni now. And I'm like, that's amazing. And it's funny about the seafood, because I don't know everything about that industry, but a lot of it's white fish, mixed in with flavor, right? You get the, fake crab, fake whatever. I feel like plant-based is you have that one flavor of plant-based, and you can make it taste like any seafood you want. So I could definitely see that parallel. In Canada, I don't know why we, maybe we have more access to fresh fish, but it's interesting.
Lots of different reasons, but cost is part and parcel of it for sure. But anyway,
well, how does the cost match up right now? Is the plant-based, is it the same? Is it more expensive? Is it nominal at this point?
Oh, that's a good question. So I suppose it depends what you're looking at.
Yeah.
I'll take eggs for example right now. So last year, plant-based eggs were very big at the show.
Okay.
Where we're at today is avian flu has hit and wiped out, flocks, thousands and thousands in Canada, the U.S., everywhere else. And the cost of eggs, if you go to the grocery store, if you're running a restaurant, have gone through the roof. How do plant-based eggs compare now to natural eggs? Probably still a bit more expensive, but that gap is closed.
Right.
But the cost to feed your animals, and whether it's beef or chicken or pork or some of those traditional meats, for sure the gap is closed, and into all things that have risen. From that perspective.
So it's just a matter of understanding your consumers, understanding what they actually want, and if plant-based is an alternative, either for health reasons or for costs, because it can now potentially be closer.
Or if you're substituting it out. So there's a small percentage of the market will go for that. You still have a high percentage of people that want things with beets and carrots and squash and alternatives.
Yeah.
We have seen a growth in the plant-based cheeses continue.
Right.
So you've got a lot of pizza companies, right? Pizza in Canada is huge.
Yeah.
Huge, right? Everybody loves pizza.
That's what we're eating this morning. All plant-based cheese, plant-based pepperoni. It's all
plant-based everything, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. But plant-based cheeses are continuing to grow and become more available. And think about what's happened in Canada. So we had last year, for the first time, two CDC, so the Canadian Dairy Commission, raised the wholesale price of milk in February, which is the annual price, and September. I can't remember when that last happened, but that's because the cost of getting that product to market. So, did plant-based increase at the same cadence? I don't know. It's really, quite honestly, we need to have a math degree now between the influence of what's going on with some of the commodities, some of the grain, or whether it could be a corn or an oil shortage, or soybeans or wheat, or because of geopolitical. We track consumer and producer price indexes, and they've all been going up at double-digit rates. So it's really hard to find something that hasn't been impacted.
Right, but I think you've kind of identified that they don't fluctuate the same. It's not like, a barrel of oil and then it stays the same. It's like you can have situations where there are, whether it's avian flu, that could make eggs now a better alternative or more cost effective. And I think if restaurants start looking at these different types of, say, plant-based options and alternatives, as food costs go up, they might have the ability to sub things out. And if they start now, they might find out that their consumers want it just because, this tastes just the same and I know it's healthier and I can get it for a similar price. Like, great.
For sure. Or even between the proteins. So funny enough, when restaurant industry took a bit of a tumble, do you know what happened was, think about lobster, think about some of those seafood that was available that you would only get at a restaurant.
Yeah, it doesn't travel well, for example.
Mussels, oysters, shellfish, some of that other
experience-based food.
Right.
Yeah.
But so they weren't selling at a restaurant, so the price actually came down in retail grocery stores because of supply and demand. So what operators are always struggling to balance, which is, I need proteins, I need to have a good menu that's going to attract my guest, but even switching between the proteins. So even to take off a poultry item and put an egg on it, still might be more cost effective, even though the price of eggs have gone up.
Yeah.
Still might be more cost effective than the poultry. It's theory, or pork, or beef, or whatever it may be. So the switching between the proteins and getting that balance, some plant-based, some not, some just a more cost effective source of the protein.
Yeah, and it's just funny being able to stuff things out too, because my wife and I actually went the opposite direction when the pandemic hit. Is we didn't order takeout. I think we ordered takeout like 4 times in the first 6 months, and because we were just cooking we were like, oh, let's cook more. We'll have more experiences together.
There you go.
Entertainment, right? Our condo is like we had our TV, living room was in our kitchen basically, so it was like a great experience. But then we got tired of like, okay, only so many new dishes, only so many new things, but if it was today, I could be like, hey, let's try to stuff some of these plant-based items in here. Let's mix it up, or let's change, because we just got into that routine. So, I mean, restaurants can be doing this right now. I mean, we're on the plant-based topic. Like I said, I was blown away this morning. Like, changed my whole perspective about how good this stuff is now. So it's something the restaurants can look at immediately, and it can help protect costs sometimes, or at least be an alternative that gets more people coming in because they want those choices.
Mm-hmm. Let's use coffee as an example. So everybody bought and ordered Amazon, every type of cooking equipment and machine, and upgraded their coffee experience because they weren't going out. But they get a little tired of making their coffee. And so even quick service restaurants, take your basic restaurants, have really upped their game to deliver more of a barista experience. Yeah. They're differentiating with different milks, oat milk, almond milk, macadamia nut milk. Some of these things are starting to grow, and flavors and combinations, because they're trying to get guests back into the restaurants. And so it's a bit of a struggle, because some people got into a bit of a pattern and a routine, and they haven't experienced the fatigue. They said, wow, I save a lot of money, if I don't do this. But so we're seeing the evolution, and there's another play there that we have yet to see play out. Air fryers went crazy, but are people still air frying today?
I mean, I got in late, so I am, and I love it. I'm making I'm air frying before I came here, but I was really late to that. I was really late to that trend. But it's actually interesting that it's so cool or refreshing that, like, even after all these years, coffee is still something that we're like, we can compete on this, we can innovate on this. It's profitable, but we need to keep trying new things. And
yes, and I think restaurants are doing a really good job, the plastic ban, so making the conversion to different cups.
Yeah.
Different, which are important to guests, because for a while there we stopped refilling. You bring your own cup and tumbler, which was environmentally, sound to practice to do, and then COVID hit. So, it's really challenging for the operator to stay on top of everything that the consumer wants. And again, what's a fad, what's a trend? So we monitor things monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual, and we try to distill, okay, what's moving, what's not moving. Plant-based isn't going away, but there's a lot of other things that we're seeing are exciting.
One of the so you were saying, like, looking at this beautiful fact sheet again, like some of these orange boxes have some interesting metrics, and one of the ones that caught my eye was the fact that these health enthusiasts, the fact that they've decreased, or they're using food service at least once a week, has decreased by 12 percentage points. So we talk about plant-based, we talk about choice, we talk about providing like people the nutritional information more. But how do you see restaurants like addressing this with everything that you've seen in the industry? Like that's interesting that they're not dining out as much, but they're the ones most conscious about what food they're having versus maybe an enthusiast.
Or some of their drivers have changed. So, someday you can be going along, and the real purpose for your, some driver for your occasion was to be consistent, or speed, or convenience, and you will pay because you're juggling the balls. But now, as you're getting older, which is typical with the population, we start to be more health aware.
Yeah.
And so we're going to make conscious decisions about what we eat, where we eat, how we eat, with health in mind. So people may have thought, well, maybe I'm eating healthy at home, or maybe I wasn't eating healthy at home, I'm going to exercise, or maybe they're moving to, I need to treat myself. So back to that experience and connect. And so health is not as much of a driver for some people dining out as it was, say, 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's not gone away. It's not going to not go away. And I'm sure it'll pop back again as we all reestablish ourselves in our routines. But
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're an aging population, so health is a really important factor, and it's no matter what health.
And I know that, like, we were talking about this earlier today, I think, but it's easier to prepare a healthy meal at home sometimes because it's like, I know what's going into this, or I want to chop up some veggies and I know that it's going to be healthy versus the idea of, and they probably got used to doing that a lot more over the past, couple of years when they've been at home. So it's scarier. So maybe restaurants need to understand that they need to make sure that, like, health is one of their driving factors if that's what they're targeting this, these consumers, right?
Yeah, great point. So it's always there. All the big chains understand and follow this. But if we think about that segment called fast casual, so fast casual operators could be chopped leaf, lots of ethnic cuisines, but where you're in front of them putting your food together. So even a Subway's, I want peppers and lettuce and tomatoes or onions or this, or I'm going to forego the cheese or the aioli sauce, whatever that piece is making it happen. Well, that fast casual segment shrunk. It very much so in Canada. So it went down to 3% of our sales last year.
Interesting, yeah.
Within the whole piece because we weren't allowed to interact and make that happen. And so you're not having that opportunity when you're doing a delivery or a drive-through, which right now, especially in quick service restaurants, 55% of the occasion, you're ordering 55% of the time inside the unit. Before, it used to be 70%.
Yeah.
So 3 years ago, it was 70%. So what's increased? Drive-through has increased, digital ordering, and that piece is increased. So how you order and engage with that brand. So that freshness, that healthy choice, exactly making my build, that opportunity is gone away a little bit for some people. And now here's the question. If you're used to ordering on the app, now I'm going to use McDonald's as a really good example here because you can pick your toppings and add or plus, but it's on a kiosk. You still have to go into the unit to do that.
Yeah.
Are you going to do that in the drive-thru? Not sure.
Oh man, well, you get to the drive-thru and now the great thing is you can sit in the parking lot, you can order what you want on the app, and then you get to the drive-thru window and you just tell them your number. Because even me going to McDonald's, I was like, you sit there and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, one more car. Cool. What am I going to get? Am I going to get the Big Mac combo again? And then you get there and you're just like, what do you want? Oh, the Big Mac combo. Ah, damn, I wanted to get something different.
Right. It's easy. That's the
easy.
Routine meal.
Yeah.
It's the, and we see this a little bit in recessionary times, but you're going to order what's familiar and not go too crazy with this stuff because, am I going to pay extra for that? Are they going to top it or how are they going to build it? Or does the person putting my meal together know what they're doing? Whereas if you're in a fast casual and you're inside the unit and they're assembling in front of you, you can pick you can see the tomatoes are green or red, not green. Or what does the lettuce look like? Or what else do they have? Guacamole. Oh, that's fresh guacamole. You can see it with your eyes and you can make that choice and make a health conscious choice.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talked fast casual, and I hadn't thought about it until you brought it up, and that makes perfect sense where fast casual is trying to, it's the middle ground between going to a sit-down restaurant and having like a really good meal or a more, involved meal than something like, just quick service. But that category didn't really exist anymore because you either went out and you wanted that full meal experience or you just wanted something convenient. So I'd be curious to see if people, and maybe it's not the food, it's more of the other reasons of the need to connect, the need to even keeping it simple while being more than quick service. We might see that rise again, but it's interesting to see that it's not enough of an in-person experience, I think, to justify the extra time or the extra cost.
Well, it's got to deliver on, yes, the customization. So customization was important before the pandemic.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, it sort of dropped down in priority. I'm just happy to get food. I'm happy to get something that tastes. Did it come hot?
Yeah.
Did the hot food come hot? Did the cold food come cold? So, cold. So, our priorities change, and that's really how some of what we accept and consider a good experience, right? Good value, and that's kind of what things are shifting. Is the experience that you had before the pandemic is different than you had during, and now different afterwards. What does that cost? And so we drive, if we're restaurant operators or guests, we drive value through a great experience. So it was a lot of fun. The server was fantastic, very knowledgeable, suggested a great wine or knew what was in the build. It had nuts, it didn't have nuts. Or was it through the food? Was it delicious? Was it exciting, innovative, something that I hadn't imagined? Or, what were those attributes? And one of the value attributes is price. But as we've come through the pandemic, price is now rising, right? So the value. So there's an exchange there.
It's hard to compete on something
to feel value.
Yeah.
So cup of coffee that you used to get as your favorite, or a beer that you'd get at your restaurant. Now, if the beer's gone up $1 between government taxes and cost of living,
Boy, yeah.
is it worth you to go out to have the beer on premise, to get a beer and be with your friends? Maybe it is for the buck, right? You're happy to pay that because you're getting value through the experience, or value through that local brew at the craft brew pub, whatever it may be. However, if you are a quick service operator or a full service operator that's not changing up your menu, and it's the same thing and the price is going up, your guests are noticing it. And if you're not delivering on the other attributes that are important for their visit, then you're going to lose out over time. So we're getting back to going out and spending, but consumers are going to be discriminating with their tastes, not only in terms of the food they order, but where they go to get that experience.
Yeah, and we talked about it at the start, and it's been a pretty consistent theme of just like people have more choice than ever, and they're going out less than ever. So you really have to delight them, and you really have to show them something special to get them in your doors or to get them to order. Now, we are at Restaurants Canada, and I mean, so someone who has their finger on the pulse before they got here, have you seen anything at the show that's either surprising or that you were expecting, or what have you seen that might be kind of people should pay attention to while they're here?
Nothing really surprising new, because I see a lot of it.
It means you're doing your job, obviously.
Yeah. But what I will say, some observations. So here, the tech section has expanded. So there's more options there to operate efficiently. So front of house, back of house, I'm seeing more of that. What I really like that I've seen is the evolution. I know you've talked to your previous guests about sustainability, but the eco clustering of options. So from packaging to food recovery, that's really great to see that streaming through. Yeah. We're very socially aware here. Nothing really shocking. There's lots of equipment here, but nothing new that I hadn't seen before. Now, that said, I'll be fair. There's about a third of the show floor I haven't intimately walked. So I'm looking for a couple of new and exciting things, and I'm sure they're here.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's lots here. There's something for everybody. And I think it's interesting when it comes to sustainability. And you talked about like limiting food waste and like food and recovering and being able to recover certain things. And it's like, I always think that people forget that there's 3 R's in recycling, right? There's the reduce, like everyone's all about like recycle. Oh, let's recycle this. That's great. But the reduce and reuse aspect is something that I generally try to focus on in my life. It's like, can I reuse this? Can I save this container?
Yeah.
Sometimes I save too many boxes or containers. I'll have to get rid of a couple, but the amount of times I'm able to grab those. And so it's very cool. You made the point of saying that these people are kind of banding together now because they're getting more than just, I'm more than just a straw company. I'm doing all the packaging now. And then we're partnering up with, whether it's like smart recycling and waste services. So very cool.
I can't think of who the operator is, but we have a global practice and an expert. He posted an operator. It was an Asian operator. And so we talked about value and price. So operators were taking price. And we're at the threshold right now where guests are going to stop. They're reducing their frequency, or they're going to make something else at home. So between the combination of food waste and price value, this operator actively reduced portion size as a means, as a business strategy to be effective. So people are throwing away things, and also the price point. So they led with that. They put it out there. We're going to reduce our portion sizes, and here's the price. So you're getting a good, theoretical value. You feel that esoterically they're doing the right thing because there's less going out, or less less food actually ending up at the end of the day in their local garbage front of the house. So, but they've led with that strategy.
And I actually kind of love it. I mean, there's certain things that I don't like about it, because I remember a very specific QSR that I used to go to all the time that they decided to just not change their price. Then they made their packaging smaller, and then they started increasing their price. And it was like, I get the trend, but I'm curious about the data you've seen on, I can see Americans not liking this very much, as in we're going to reduce your portion size and you're going to pay the same amount of money. But as someone who can say, well, I still want the same meal, but I don't want to pay extra money. And I do normally have some of it left over. So that concept of just I'm sure you can maybe have the upsize selling if you want, but just saying we're going to try to reduce portions, and if this is good enough, great.
Well, it ticks a few boxes for a few different reasons, and I don't want to generalize, but I would suggest that there are some Americans that plan that routine meal to go out and have dinner and have a portion that's so big that they're going to plan for the leftovers, so that they're going to plan to have that at lunch for the next day.
Yeah.
That's part of their dining out strategy. Whereas I can't see that happening as much in Canada. having enough food on the plate left over, it's food waste.
Yeah.
So maybe it gets eaten, maybe it doesn't, but there's also a package it has to go in. If you're not consuming it at the restaurant, it has to go in a package that you have to take home.
Which is extra cost for the restaurant, especially
It
when you're looking
is
at that.
very costly for the restaurant,
Okay.
especially now that the restaurants aren't using single-use plastic. So they're moving to compostable materials and some other more sustainable materials for take-up packaging, and they, in and of themselves, can be more costly.
But and so that's just such an incredible insight, and I mean, you identified the fact that if we just reduce our portions and have less food waste, there's a literal cost to that container, and maybe it's also something that they might not come back the next day for lunch because they have leftovers. So it's if you can just reduce your waste, reduce your portion size, you might increase your visits, and you're also reducing the cost of the dining experience because you're not having to give that package, which is probably more expensive than ever now, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and ask chefs or Jay sitting beside you or some others, how many of them actually design a meal that is meant to be cooked in a restaurant in terms of all the quality that goes into it, packaged up, refrigerated, reheated the next day. So, what does it say about your brand? Some operators in certain brands may really enjoy this as part of, hey, it's really better the second day. Or would you rather have them come back in or have another occasion through the week with something that was the right size?
You almost don't want to send them home with the food because you're you're going to love it in the restaurant, and then you're going to have it a couple days later and be like, oh, it's not as good as I remember. And it's
not as hot.
But they won't make the relationship.
It might not be dressed or topped or prepared or served the same way, or your hot item has been mixed with your cold item. Yeah.
So how do restaurateurs interact with you? If, for example, people listen to this right now, they're like, I need some of this insight. This would be great. What's the normal engagement with you? Do they go to your website? Do they have you have consultants? Maybe you could kind of break that down a little bit.
So we have a number of really self-serve tools.
Yeah.
We call our platform Ignite. And so I would say the majority of operators really start it with our menu data. So what's happening, what are flavors, ingredients, preparations, healthy claims. We track healthy claims on menu. So is it about keto right now, or is it about gluten-free? Or is it about dairy-free? Or is it about plant-based?
Yeah.
We track with statistical numbers what's happening, so you can stay on top of that. And lots of insight. So it can be a resource for inspiration. It can help you with pricing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're an operator, it can help you with the pricing. And we do this with beverages too, and of course, adult beverages. So think cocktails. How do we create cocktails? We saw this when full-service restaurants had alcohol-free cocktails and fizzies. But now go to any quick-service restaurant and you have refreshers or drinks that are multiple flavors in a cold format that's $2 or $3, and you have it through the drive-through. So real evolution of some of that. We call that sort of a flavor life cycle. So we work an awful lot with operators on that. For chain operators, we track very robust some of this consumer data here, but we're also tracking their guest experience across almost 100 different attributes at 55 chain restaurant brands in Canada. So on an annual basis, 25,000 consumer survey. But things like, are you dining in? Are you dining out? Is what's more important to you? So here's another point. So before the pandemic, the three most important attributes a restaurant operator needed to deliver on was food taste and flavor, food quality, and service.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, that changed a little bit. So some of those dropped. So crept into not from the top 5 to the top 3 was dishware was the restaurant cleanliness and dishware and serving cleanliness. That became a priority.
Makes sense.
So that's still in the top 5, but it's moved out.
Right.
And think about back when you could order a pizza and it'd be free if you couldn't get it in 30 minutes. Or the drive-through wars, where the major chains were saying, we can get you through this drive-through in a minute, 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Speed of service dropped way off during the pandemic.
They had no choice.
We had no choice.
Yeah, you added so many steps of service, right?
But guess what? It's now in the top 3, order accuracy, because we've gone to digital apps and takeout and delivery. And now the consumer frustration is, I didn't get what I ordered.
Yeah.
And that's part of the experience. So we track all of these attributes, from service to cleanliness to what's on the food to tech and Wi-Fi. So that's especially for the younger consumers.
Yeah.
Right? They're very tech enabled. They want to have a good experience.
It's the first question my nephew's asked me. It's like, did you guys change the Wi-Fi password? I can't get on. I need the Wi-Fi. Okay, cool. Also, good to see you.
Yes, exactly. So we track all of that, and that really helps them stay on top of what's most important to the guest now, and who is that guest that's dining out. So who's going to quick service restaurants, who's going to full service restaurants. So we can really unpack a lot of that, and we're answering really interesting questions for some brands that operate across the country. So maybe their sales are better in one region than another. Why is that? Well, we can unpack and look at it geographically and say, you know what, your scores over here for service in this province are not so good compared to here. oh, okay, we can help them problem solve that way and see opportunities for other areas.
Mhm.
So that's the consumer piece. And then I would say our sort of third pillar is industry, sizing, the top players, the news feed. And so we interact with a lot of chains and distributors and suppliers in that space, what
Yep.
we call our Ignite company or industry tool. It's very complementary to the menu tool. But that's really those three. And then, of course, we do custom consumer research every month, all the time.
Right. I just love that you kind of, I think a really important point is this a trend? Is this a fad? Is this signal? Is this noise? Right. And that's where you have to kind of, people don't know. So they can come to you and they can find out, should I, start buying a bunch of cronuts? Like, is that sticking around, And you just don't know. So it's very
Exactly.
cool. Let's see. I don't know how much longer we're supposed to be on here, but I know we've had a pretty great talk, and I really appreciate you coming and sharing all your insights.
It's been a lot of fun, Chris.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the group?
No, I think that's it. I know it's a great show. I actually want to hit the floor and get to some of those booths that I haven't had a chance to see. And it's just been a lot of fun. We always like to be, Technomic always likes to participate in the SVK network, and glad to be here.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. And everybody needs to go check out Technomic. If you're not doing this, if you're not looking at this data, you're not looking at these trends, this is how you can get started. And it's more important than ever. Thank you so much for coming.
We'll help you get there next.
Exactly.
We'll answer that for you.
What's next? Perfect. All right. Do we have outro music?
Yeah, we got it.
Let's do it.